All right, welcome back to the Slice Tennis Podcast. I'm your host today, Stephen Boughton, stepping in for JP Hovey, who is in Greece on a well-deserved vacation. The pictures we're seeing are crazy. Such a beautiful place and a beautiful guy there vacationing. So I'm flying solo today. So I am missing my co-pilot, which is sad, but we've got a great interview coming in to you later in the show. Elliot Loney, one of the best impersonators, comedians in the world, and definitely in the tennis world space, will be joining me for an interview on his career impersonating some of the greats of tennis and like his interactions with those people after impersonating them. We'll get more background on him and the Aussie players and etc. Lots of other personalities in tennis. So that's gonna be awesome. Stay till the end for that. But in the meantime, we will get rolling with the slice. Of course, presented by our great sponsors at Betway. So, yeah, I am here alone. So, I will get into my week by myself and just talk about myself like a crazy narcissist. But yeah, my last week was mostly filled with just living, watching the French Open. And we will have, by this time's posted, we'll have a quarterfinal preview out. But yeah, I would say at the quarterfinals this year, is really when the tennis has stepped up. Like it's been in the third round, we talked about it. There was no upset, so it's been a little bit, I would say, lacking drama in this tournament. I will say though, Bublik beating Jack Draper was incredible. That's kind of the spark to the tournament that I think maybe other people felt like it needed. But yeah, in general, my last week's just been with watching tennis. Early mornings here, I love it because I'm up early anyways with the baby. So early mornings here is a great time for me to watch tennis in France. And then what else? The hockey. Yeah, the Edmonton Oilers have made it to the Stanley Cup final. That was confirmed in the last week. So that's great news. And now we're just waiting for the Stanley Cup final to start. So if any of you are in Florida or Florida Panthers fans, I think I saw one in the comments. It's going down starting on Wednesday. So maybe that's tomorrow based on when this will come out. So that's going to be a crazy series. I'll be watching hockey. I'll be watching lots of tennis over the next week as the French Open concludes. So we'll talk more about that. But now we're going to get into our best bet of the day presented by our presenting sponsors, Betway. Here's an ad read from JP Hovey from a previous episode.
Hit an ace with Betway and get up to $200 if your first bet loses, plus 50 bonus spins no matter the result. Scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section below to create an account and redeem your offer. Offer is only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply, of course, and this offer is not available in Ontario, and you must be 19 and up. Please play responsibly.
And now let's get into it. I thought today would be an appropriate time to get into the updates to the outright odds to win the French Open on both the women and the men. On the women's side, you've seen Sabalenka cruise through the draw, and you've seen Swiatek beat Rybakina, which is a big win for her. So at the beginning of the tournament, Sabalenka had quite a large lead in the outright odds to win the tournament. But now with the updates, it's plus 210, plus 210 for Sabalenka to win, and also plus 210 for Swiatek to win. So the odds maker have increased Swiatek up the board, which I think is very deserved and smart because she's won this title, I think, 3 times. And they've also got Mira Andreeva up at plus 400 and Coco Gauff at plus 500. So those are the 4 definitely main odds leaders right now in the women's. And then if we go to the men's, the update is Carlos Alcaraz is the favorite still at minus 120. So that's crazy. So on the women's, there was no minus odds. Favorites, there is on the men. So Carlos Alcaraz minus 120. As Zverev said, the biggest risks to Zverev losing are on the top side. I guess he would put himself there. Sinner and Djokovic are on the top. So Alcaraz does, in theory, have the easiest route right now, but they've got Sinner right behind him at plus 155. Then they've got Djokovic at plus 700, so a good amount behind him, and then Zverev at plus 1400. So they don't really have Zverev much ahead of Musetti, which I still think is smart funny point here, they have Alexander Bublik ahead of both of the American men. So they got Bublik at plus 6,600, and they've got Tommy Paul at plus 8,000, Francis Tiafoe at plus 10,000. So I know ESPN or TNT covering the French Open wouldn't like those odds from Betway, but Alexander Bublik, unbelievable scenes on court today when he took out Jack Draper, but he's up against Jannik Sinner next. So I think his odds at winning the tournament or even that match are essentially zero, very low. So I think it's a little bit crazy to have him above Tommy Paul and Francis Tiafoe. So you can let me know what you think about that in the comments below. But that is the best way best bet of the day, presented by our great sponsor at Betway. So yeah, that is that. Alex Eala Hour is next, and unless I've missed something, yeah, we haven't seen her on court since the French Open, where she lost in 3 sets to Arango. But the news is, for you Filipino fans, that Alex Eala's next tournament will be the Birmingham Classic on grass. And I've always thought that the grass surface or quicker surface should help her. It, serve is a huge part of the game. She's a great returner, so she can return a bigger serve on grass. But her serve, which is a liability a little bit on clay, was getting exposed, I felt. And on grass, I think it can slip through the court better, stay lower, be harder to attack for her opponents, and therefore she could hopefully have a better time. I do feel like she needs to get some wins, string them together. So she plays Furvitova. I think Ludmila Furvitova first, Linda Furvitova first up. And that's tomorrow. So actually at this time, probably by the time this is out, her match will have already happened. So let me know down in the comment section below, Filipino tennis fans, what your thoughts are on that match that just happened and kind of her recent run of form since the Miami Open, because it's definitely, I wouldn't say it hasn't gone as well as it could have, or as well as she probably would have hoped. But she is still incredibly young and has so much to build on and improve on. So not super unexpected, but great to see her back on court on grass, which again, I think will be a better surface for her potentially than clay. So we will see. But that's the Alexandra Eala Hour on the Slice, as we do every podcast. So if you're new here, make sure you subscribe, because we talk about Alex Eala every podcast. We talk about the best bet of the day by Betway. And we talk about our weeks. I could probably summarize JP's week as in one of the best of his life in Greece, hanging out with his beautiful wife, sitting, and just enjoying the Gaelic Sea. Not the Gaelic Sea, that's in Ireland. The Adriatic Sea, I believe, is where I think it's the Adriatic Sea where Greece is. But anyways, what's been going on in the French Open? So let's break it down a little bit more. So this is recorded Monday afternoon here in Canada. The podcast is probably out Tuesday afternoon. So big picture, what's happened, because I think talking about the quarterfinal matches that would have happened already is not smart. But what's happened so far is Djokovic, I think, has been impressive. He's beaten Cam Norrie now, straight sets. It was a little tricky in the second set. Cam was able to break his serve a few times, but on paper, super smooth sailing. Has not dropped a set yet, I believe. And until this point, I did a ranking of all the 8 players left in the draw on the men's side, who spent the most time on court and the least time. The least is Sinner at 7 hours and 46 minutes through 4 matches. The most is Tommy Paul at 12 hours and 36 minutes. Djokovic is kind of right in the middle. He's the fifth place for, first is Sinner with the least amount. He's at 5th at 9 hours and 25 minutes. So not anything egregious, I don't think. I think it's good for him. He's won now 8 matches in a row. So this is good. The good news if you're a Djokovic fan. The bad news is you're playing Alexander Zverev next, which you really have to think, for Zverev, who's never beaten Djokovic at a major, this has got to be a time he's licking his chops. It's the oldest Djokovic has ever been. Yes, Djokovic is on a bit of a roll here since Geneva, but still, Well, sorry, I shouldn't say he's never beat him in a major. He beat him in Australia, but Djokovic pulled out. So he will take confidence from winning that first set there. But if Djokovic is going to play a full match like we would expect here, Zverev's probably got the best chance maybe he's ever had. But I don't know. Maybe on an Australian Open court like they were on, then Zverev was probably playing better then. His serve is less easy to handle. I don't know. Djokovic has been magical on this court. Philippe Chatrier won the Olympics last year, hasn't lost yet this year, hasn't lost very often at the quarterfinal stage, if ever, at the French Open. I didn't look that up. Someone can fact check me. But in general, it's going to be a tough one for Djokovic, but it's also going to be obviously a tough one for Zverev. I think mostly because of the ghosts in his closet of losing so many times to Djokovic at the majors. But again, the last time they played, he did get through, won the set and got the default. So that's a win. A win's a win. So that's gonna be tough for Djokovic against Zverev, but also Zverev against Djokovic. Now, Sinner versus Bublik, I think, yeah, it's obviously big time advantage for Sinner. So we'll see what Bublik can do there, but I don't think that he's got much of a chance, although he did play lights out against Draper, so you just never know. That's why you got to play the match. But we do have 2 matches going on tomorrow, early on Tuesday. That's Tommy Paul versus Carlos Alcaraz, and that is Lorenzo Musetti versus Francis Tiafoe. Francis Tiafoe, who I picked to lose earlier to the guy he was playing, Altmaier. I thought that was a fair pick. He beat him in straight sets. He hasn't lost a set, and his time on court is actually, he still drags his feet somehow. Or no, his time on court, is third out of the 8 players. He's 841. So the only people he spent less or more time on court than are Zverev and Sinner. So great work from Francis, and that's going to be a tough one for Lorenzo. That's I think a bit of a pick'em. Francis looks like he's feeling good. He'll be rested, and maybe Musetti has more to lose on the clay than Tiafoe. So that'll be an interesting one. I would probably, it's already happened by the time this has come out, so whatever happened, but I expect a tough match there. And then Alcaraz versus Sinner, and by Sinner I mean Tommy Paul. I just feel, unfortunately, especially on these natural surfaces, Alcaraz has too much sauce for Paul. Tommy can do a lot of things to hurt Alcaraz. He's beat him before, but over 5 sets, he's going to have to get some help from Alcaraz, I think, for Alcaraz to have some serious lapses where he can steal a set or 2 and then outplay him for a set can definitely happen. But yeah, the serve that's been improved for Tommy Paul is going to get reined back in on the clay, and the power he does have to punch past Alcaraz is minimized the most on this surface. So it's going to be an uphill battle for Tommy, I think, as well. He spent the most time on court out of any quarterfinalist. So this is a good tournament for him, making the quarterfinals here for the first time. So in a sense, there's kind of no shame in him losing the next match. So we'll just see how he's able to compete. But that's what I think. I think it'll be a good one. And all the quarterfinals are great matchups. So anyways, that's kind of an update, but we've already done a quarterfinal update, and tomorrow's going to be a semifinal preview. So without further ado, let's just get into our conversation with Elliot Loney, who is a genius when it comes to impersonations. He's made me crack up so many times. So this is the first time we'll ever talk. It's going to be live for you guys to watch. So here it is, without any further delay, Elliot Loney. All right, welcome to the show. A very special guest, one of my favorite comedians and definitely my most favorite impersonators, Elliot Loney. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. It's an honor being here, mate. I love the show, so thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Welcome to the Slice. We know you're a huge tennis guy, and we're going to get into that and kind of, I want to, get your thoughts on the French Open, but I also really want to get into this conversation a bit about your background, your career, and kind of some of your thoughts about, pro tennis and kind of career life stuff that we all live through. So, but first of all, you're obviously in Australia right now. You're down under, and have you been able to watch any of the French Open at all so far?
Well, I don't know if our viewers can pick up on this, but my eyes are currently redder than the devil's appendage as I've been up very, very late watching the French Open over here. I absolutely love tennis. And so I watched Bublik last night topple Jack Draper, which I thought was a hell of a win. So, yeah, I was up till the early hours of the morning watching that. And yeah, I can't get enough. I just stay up all night watching Roland Garros, Wimbledon, whenever it's on down here. I'm watching it all the time. US Open, all the time.
I feel bad for the Aussies because I complain, covering the sport full time. During the Australian Open, I have to stay up late. Like the 7 p.m. matches in Melbourne start at 12 o'clock here. Like, so it's a 5-hour match. I'm up till 5 a.m. But you guys have that like almost for the other 3 majors, don't you? Like, it's never really a great time for the Aussies to watch tennis when it's not in their country.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. And to be honest, I speak about a lot of the players, and that's the toughest thing about being an Australian tennis player, just geographically where we're situated, because it's just, I guess for the European players and the players in America, there's so many challenges and future events that they can like kind of zip home, catch up with their friends.
Yeah.
They don't get that homesickness, I feel like the Australian players do, because they're just traveling so much and they're so far away from any sort of common comfort that they're used to, I guess.
Yeah, no, it is. I've been to Australia twice. It really is kind of feels like a different world. Like,
yeah,
I think the water goes a different way down the toilet bowl. We'll talk in a great way. Like,
there's no Tim Horton over here.
There's no Tim Hortons, so I'm just like I'm stumbling around lost in the outback. Just can't find good coffee. No, but it is for the love of the game, like you said. So speaking of the love of the game, I know you've been familiar with Rafa Nadal's career. What did you think? Did you see any clips from his retirement ceremony, and what was it like to see the big four there?
Yeah, it's surreal having all those guys in one place on the court. It's crazy to me that Novak's still going as well. Like he's just a freak. He's just continuously smashing records. But all those guys are such champions. Like I grew up watching Federer. I love watching Nadal compete, of course. Murray, I think to say that he's only won 3 Grand Slams, I feel as though he's won 10. He was just always there in the latter stages of the tournament. So to see them all together, and I think the actual ceremony itself, having Rafa honoured with a permanent plaque with his footprint on the court, I think that's a really nice gesture and very fitting for a man who's won so many Roland Garros titles. Like he really deserves to be honoured in that way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And actually, Elliot, sorry, I'm actually just getting word here from our producer that we've got a special guest coming on, and I guess this is a surprise appearance because I didn't know that we were going to get this person, but Rafa Nadal is apparently on deck here in our green room at headquarters and is ready to come give us an exclusive chat about his retirement ceremony. Let's bring him in now, I guess. There he is, Rafa Nadal. I can't believe that we got you for the show. How are you doing? And what were your thoughts on your retirement ceremony?
Hello, Steven. Look, I'm very happy to be on the show now. Your podcast is incredible. I would prefer your name to be Topspin because I play with a lot of topspin. Maybe not as, but I'm very happy to be here. And look, my ceremony was unbelievable. I obviously chop everybody at Roland Garros, so very happy.
Yeah, and I mean, them putting a plaque with your footprint on it on center court is like, could you have ever dreamed of that as a little kid from Mallorca?
I mean, no, because growing up, Rafa did not have many pesos, because Uncle Tony was always spending all the money on my development. I had no childhood. I was put in a little hut and just made to hit forehand, backhand all day long. So very difficult for me, but to see the plaque on the court is incredible. I'm going to have to be even more OCD every time I come to Roland Garros now. I'm going to have to lick the plaque every time I get to the court, just when I line up a drink bottle. So we're going to see a big Legends match. I'm going to be very, very awkward with the plaque, I think.
Well, Rafa, it's That's hilarious, and I can't wait to see your next trips to Roland Garros and maybe how you'll be celebrated at other majors. But thanks for coming on the Slice. We really appreciate your time and how we got this to work out.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steven. I look forward to getting on the practice court with you and chopping you 6 love, 6 love.
I mean, I wouldn't want to get chopped by anyone else.
I
Anyways,
gotta chop.
thank you, Rafa. We'll see you next time. Man, I mean, can you guys believe that? We got Rafa Nadal on the show. And I guess we'll bring Elliot Loney back in because that was just an unexpected unexpected guest there, Elliot. can you believe that? We just got Rafa Nadal. I've been trying for 7 years and just Jacob pulls that up out of nowhere.
No, it's just utterly bizarre, really. It's amazing that no matter where I am in my life, he just seems to be at arm's length. It's bizarre. He's got to stop following me around.
Yeah, it's crazy. It must feel almost like he's like in your head or something. Like it must be crazy.
Yeah, it's utterly bizarre. So for a man of his stature to follow someone like me around, it's weird.
But in reality, Elliot, have you had any interactions with him have you met him in person, and like have you shown him in your impersonation of him, or have you had any interactions with him?
Look, the only time that I've ever come across Rafa was at the Montreal Rogers Cup in 2017. I had a brief interaction with him because we were about to do some content that had been organized prior. I'd just done a whole bunch of stuff with like the Bryan brothers and Grigor Dimitrov and a few other players who had just come through. And Rafa stopped in front of the cameraman, stopped in front of me. I basically had the microphone ready to go. And I was like, this is my moment. Like, I've been waiting my whole life for this. And someone from a different broadcaster came over and was like, hey, dude, like, this is not your interview. Like, we have this interview with Rafa. Like, get away. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And like, I just literally stood there with the mic and looked at this guy and I was like, oh man, like, you don't understand. Like, this is like I've flown from this is my moment. Anyway, Rafa was quite nice. He was very apologetic. Like, he actually looked at me and was like, well, I am very sorry, little guy. I am very sorry. He called me little guy, and he tapped me on the shoulder. He said, I am very sorry, little guy. I gonna have to. And he sort of like chuffed off. And then like I watched him in front of me, like no more than 3 meters away, conduct this candid interview with the same dickhead who pulled him away. It was a good moment. I could see that he was genuinely empathetic. So he seemed like quite genuine about not being able to do the interview. But I wasn't sure whether or not he was familiar with the fact that I was doing the impersonations. But this could be hearsay, but I have been told that he is aware of the impersonation and he has seen it.
Okay. So, yeah. I'm sure he has. And I feel like that was fairly early on, maybe in your so it wasn't, if that happened like now, I'm sure he would. And I think he's a very funny guy. I've heard like when he's speaking his own language, when he's around his boys, and I've heard he's from very good sources that he's very nice. So I feel like if he had the time and wasn't getting harangued by that guy, he would have done, he would have given you the time. But
I think so as well. Yeah. I mean, I've seen him play board games and stuff. Like when I've been with Thanasi or Nick on tour, oftentimes when he was still competing, he would be sitting with his entourage and they'd be playing some like Spanish board game. And it was like he was getting like right into it. Like I was sitting behind him at one stage at the Brisbane International. I think it was in 2016. And I said to Thanasi, I was like, man, I have to speak to him. Like, can I tap him on the shoulder and like just say g'day? And Thanasi was like, mate, if you do that, like I'm never speaking to you again. So
yeah. Well, Thanasi was pretty young then too. Hey, like you guys he would.
Yeah, I think that in hindsight that would have been quite embarrassing for Thanasi. So I'm glad that I didn't do that. So I did show some composure, but there's been many moments where I've thought to myself, wow, if we could do that Rafa video, Rafa on Rafa, that would be such a viral moment.
Yeah.
But haven't had the opportunity yet. But now he's retired. He's got some more time up his sleeve. Maybe he'll invite me out in his boat and we can do a couple of gags. Who knows?
Who knows? Or like, some other time at the French Open or whatever, like, retired Rafa interviewing Rafa from, the heyday, like in person or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be super cool. So, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of super cool, for the Americans, I'm Canadian, you're Australian. I know we don't really care about the Americans, but someone who does care about the Americans and how well they're doing at the French Open is Matthew McConaughey. I know you do You've done an impersonation of him in the past. What's that? And I'm actually hearing from Jacob that we're Matthew McConaughey himself on the show. Matthew, we'll bring you right in. Yes, sir. There he is. Matthew McConaughey. How are you doing?
Steve on. Very happy to be on the show, brother. It's fantastic to be here. I'm just so how do I say this? I'm just over the moon to talk about my friend Tommy Paul. What a player. What a guy.
You love Tommy Paul. Hey, he's made it to the quarterfinals. He's playing Carlos Alcaraz again. That's a tough match for him, isn't it? But he's American tough, isn't he?
Let me tell you something about life, Steven. Something about this. There's something about a guy with two first names. Tommy Paul. Say it with me, Steven. Tommy Paul.
Tommy Paul.
Tommy Paul.
Yeah, they say you can't trust a guy with two first names. Do you think that's true?
Sometimes in life, you've got a sliding door moment, man. It's like, you can go in one door and you might have someone with two first names you can't trust. You go in the other door, you have someone with two first names and you can throw all your chips out black. It doesn't really matter. The thing about Tommy Paul is he gets that Yonex racket. He gets in that little gooseneck position. It doesn't matter where he is on the court. He's fit enough to put the ball away. The one thing I like about Tommy Paul, man, is something I'm trying to implement in my own game. He's always trying to put the ball where his opponent is not. That's tennis, isn't it? That's what's life. That's what's life about. That's what I'm telling Levi every day. I'm saying, Levi, man, you just gotta grip it and rip it, man. Like a topspin forehand of Roland Garros.
Roland Garros. You just got to grip it and rip it. And what do you think about Coco Gauff? She's maybe has a better chance than Tommy, your boy Tommy, to win the whole thing.
Yeah, see, there's something I love about Coco Gauff, man. I mean, she's a hell of a player, man. She's playing like a rocket ship, like Interstellar. She's going straight up, man. I can see her making tons and tons of money and just making lots of moolah and being very happy sitting on an island somewhere when it's all said and done. Coco Gauff, I think, is one of the most talented players we got, and she's doing unbelievably well. And I think she's probably going to win Wimbledon as well. There's no doubt that.
One last question for you, Mike, or Matthew, call you whatever you want. You're the most handsome guy on earth. It's been over 20 years since an American man has won a singles major, I believe. Is it going to be another 20 years until we see our next one, or is it going to happen sooner than that?
Here's the thing, Steve on. I like to think about tennis like I think about life. Life has peaks and troughs. We're always going like a serpent slithering across the Amazon rainforest banks. It's like this. We haven't had that success in a while. We had some great champions in American tennis history. We had Pete Sampras. We had Andre Agassi. We had, Jimmy Connors, the John McEnroe. These guys are just, their names are up in lights. These guys are just interstellar. They're up in Mars. They're in Pluto. They're all over the stars. They're intertwined. They're interwoven. Their binding is all around us. But these guys, the next generation of hipsters and cool cats. These guys are gonna win majors faster than you can say, all right. I think it's going to be. I think it's only a matter of time before we see Tommy Paul on a Wheaties box. Coco Gauff's going to be on a billboard in Los Angeles promoting skincare brands before you know it. It's only a matter of time.
It's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time, Matthew. Well, I think as a matter of time, we're out of time with you because I know you got a super busy schedule. So we appreciate you being here, and we will see you next time on The Slice.
Arrivederci, Steve on. Keep doing what you do, buddy. We love your show. It's fantastic.
Man, appreciate it. What a cool cat. Matthew McConaughey on The Slice. I never would have thought. That's pretty crazy. So, yeah, we'll go back to Elliot now. And Elliot, can you believe it? Two in one day.
It's crazy, mate. I honestly don't understand why these celebrities like Rafa McConaughey tend to follow a Z-grade comedian from Australia around. It's very it's very interesting. It's very strange, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So it's nice.
Have you ever had any interactions with Matthew, or has he ever like
Yes.
responded to you on Twitter or anything?
Not direct, but he did a competition for his Green Lights book, which we were speaking about off mic. I know we've both read that book. Great read.
Yeah.
And it was a competition to do like a McConaughey impersonation to see who would win. I don't think they ever announced a winner, but essentially I did an impersonation of him reading an excerpt of his Green Lights book, and he posted about it, indirectly referenced me, and then put me on his story.
Right.
Instagram, and I got a whole bunch of followers from Austin, Texas, who were just like, this is elite. Like a whole bunch of new followers. I think I got like, I can't remember how many, maybe like 300-400 new followers from Texas that were just like McConaughey fans that were like, this is unreal.
Yeah. I actually remember that. I remember you, because I believe it was during COVID, kind of like the green light.
Yeah, I think it was around that COVID time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember seeing him repost your clip, and I was like, I don't think that was the first time I'd heard of you, but I was like, that is unreal. Like, yeah, like it's so funny. And like, yeah, just speaking about you and your career, like there's something about impersonations that, you know, and in comedy in general that is so like foundational to humans. Like, you know, I think when we can joke with other people, that's like you know, it's an easy way to know that you're around people you can trust, and like you can kind of speak the same language that goes a bit deeper than just, you know, whatever language you're talking in. Like comedy is just that thing. Like, what do you think it is about impersonations that is so, you know, funny for people? Because it is really crazy when you see someone like yourself who has such a bang on impersonations of someone. It's kind of like blows people's minds.
Yeah, I'm trying to draw a parallel here that I'm not sure is going to fit, but I'll do it anyway.
Okay.
I think, like doing stand-up comedy myself, I've had a love-hate relationship with stand-up for a lot of my, I guess you could say, career. And I would always sort of ask the best comedians that I had access to at any given time, like, what advice can you give me about comedy, man? Like, what can you tell me about comedy? Because I was so keen early on when I first started doing it. And one of the things that really stuck with me was one comedian said that good comedians say funny things, but great comedians say things funny. I was like, that's interesting. Because there's a lot of principles of comedy and there's like rules that you can follow, but that was like a very tangible thing for me, I think. And I think one of the things is if the voice is recognizable and there's audience recognition, then it's halfway there, because there's something about familiarity, and there's something about like being overzealous with that and exaggerating that familiarity that is so accessible to people.
Yeah.
Like, you know, those people like McConaughey, for example, or Rafa, they're already quite ridiculous characters. Like people already like can see that the idiosyncrasies that they have, like they're quite ingrained in people's minds, even on a subconscious level.
Right.
So I think if you start really taking the mickey out of them and like dialing it up ad nauseum and taking it to a different level, they've got the familiarity of the voice, but then they're associating it with such ridiculous scenarios that it just automatically becomes funny. And the funnier the subject matter is, the funnier it is. So I think like that audience relatability is a massive thing. And I remember Jim Carrey said something, who's a fellow Canadian, I believe.
Yeah.
He said a comedian's job is to free the audience from concern. You're not going to be concerned if you're familiar with what you're hearing. So there's something about that I think really resonates with people, and it's going quite deep, but I think there's something in that. Yeah.
Well, I think that's something I've noticed with like memes. Like memes are kind of, it's just ingrained within what I think comedy is as well. It's like that familiarity word you're saying. It's like you see a meme on Instagram, you send it to your buddy because it's like that meme is saying something that's true, but I haven't like thought about it that way, and it's usually connecting it to something else that I'm familiar with. Like it's like a movie.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, or movie clip or some other like thing to do with sports that we all know, and then
even on
like
a subconscious
brings it into your life.
Yeah, even on a subconscious level, that's exactly right. Like I think, you know, sometimes, for example, we just did McConaughey. Like if you just put McConaughey in a ridiculous scenario, you know, it's like you're automatically halfway there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
So
So did you start doing impersonations first, or did you start doing general comedy first? Or like, how
I
did
think
that come to be?
I think I was always the class clown at school. My first love, of course, being tennis,
Mhm.
but I was always a quirky, kind of a funny guy, I felt. So I naturally gravitated towards those two things. But my first and real genuine passion and love was tennis. So like the first time I ever fell in love, I feel like when you ask someone that question, you'd be like, when was the first time you ever fell in love? And they'll always talk about a girl. Or like, you know, if you're talking to a guy, like most of the time they'll talk about a girl and they'll be like, oh, this girl, like she took my heart. You know, they'll like go
Yeah.
into some big long tangent about some love that they like. The first time I ever fell in love was with a thing. Like I
Right.
loved tennis. Like the moment I picked up a racket and the moment I first started playing tennis was like the moment that I was like, as an 11-year-old kid, I was like, this is all I want to do.
Right.
Care about anything else. I was delusional. I was just like, I'm going to be the number one in the world.
Yeah.
I'm going to win Grand Slams and I'm going to play
Yeah.
tennis, you know? And
I
this
was
is something that I'm really excited to talk about on your show, because one of the things I find so funny is because of the comedy side of things and because of the stuff that I do, the niche tennis comedy stuff and the stuff that I've sort of just naturally through osmosis kind of injected into my life and the sport, I've kind of like, I feel, achieved my dreams of becoming a pro tennis player without actually becoming a pro tennis player. Like
right.
everything that I've wanted to do as a kid, I've done through being an idiot with a wig. You know, like
Yeah.
it's literally, and I suppose we'll touch on it a bit later, but you know, when I was on center court with Novak at on Rod Laver Arena,
Right.
I just have this memory that's just going to be burnt into my mind until I die, of me standing on Rod Laver Arena, packed Rod Laver Arena, ready to go in my Novak kit, standing alongside Novak, who was literally in the ready position. And Novak's in the ready position, like with his racket, and sees me and just goes, "Hello there." You know, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
literally, it took me a moment to be like I kind of look behind me, like, is there another? And then I realized, I was like, oh my God, like I've achieved my dreams. Like I'm
Yeah.
on center court at the Grand Slam that I visited as a kid to watch my favorite players play, about to walk on court with the greatest player that's ever picked up a racket. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's all I wanted as a kid. I've done it. So I
Yeah.
feel like in a way I've kind of achieved all of the things that I wanted to do, but not in the traditional sense. It's bizarre. Yeah.
That's super cool to hear. And I think that's you know, tennis media, a lot of tennis media people, I think that's what we're trying to do as well. It's like, okay, we're not going to be the pro player. How can we be around the sport, right? And you've done it in such a cool way, and you've added so much to the tennis media, social media world. I'd love to ask you about Novak though, because your impersonation of him is top notch. And I think in your impersonation, you could say you definitely play on like his cocky side, you know. And a lot of people know that he's a genuinely great guy. And some of his fans maybe don't get that sarcasm there. And then, but when you met him in person, like, was he like, did he love your impersonation? And how did
Yes,
that go?
man, it was the coolest thing. So I was in Sydney actually at the Homebush Challenger tournament with Thanasi. And I was with his team, and I spent like a week with him as he was just trying to get his ranking back up, and he was coming back from injury. And so we were in Sydney, and I got these notifications on my Instagram, and it was like, this can't be real. It was Novak Djokovic had liked a whole bunch of posts and even left a comment on one of my videos. And I was like rubbing my eyes because I just woke up in the morning, and I was like, this can't be real. It's Novak Djokovic. And I ran into Thanasi's bedroom because we had a double, we had like a, it was like we were staying in the same hotel, and we had like, he was in one room, I was in the other room. So I burst through his door, and he's like, what are you doing, bro? And I was like, man, like Novak just liked all my videos, man. How sick is this? He's like, yeah. Like, I guess for him, he interacts with him all the time. So it's so
Yeah.
normal. And I was like, man, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. Like, it's Novak, man.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, I followed him on Instagram straight away, liked a few of his videos, kept tabs on him. Like, I was like, this is insane. I can't believe like he's done this. And then I was kind of just like, you know, on a high for about a week. And then I noticed another notification. It was like, Novak Djokovic has followed you on
Oh, yeah.
Instagram. I was like, no way, no way. And then I got another notification, and Novak Djokovic sent me a DM. Like, he's in my DM, sending me a DM, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And he said something like, I'd love to get it up, but I don't want to like accidentally jump out of the video. But it was like essentially like a message where he said like he'd like to film a gag, catch up during Oz Open, and do something together.
Yeah.
Of course, I jumped at the opportunity. I got in touch with him, got in touch with his manager, and we teed something up for that Oz Open. But when I first met him, his manager, Charlie, was in the corridors of Rod Laver Arena in Melbourne. And I remember being quite nervous. And I've met quite a few of the people that I impersonate, or I guess you could say like celebrities. But because I guess I'm such a tennis fan, I got so much passion and admiration for these guys. It didn't hit me what was going on until he was actually standing in front of me.
Yeah.
So he came out of the tunnel from a practice court with Goran Ivanisevic, who was his coach at the time, and his team. And immediately Charlie was like, hey, like Novak, and Novak was like, oh my God, yeah, oh wow, yeah, how you got? Like, he was so excited to see me. And I was like, I could barely speak. Like, I was so choked up. I was like, dude, like, it took me a while to kind of, get my thoughts straight. But what I found so amazing about Novak was he was so genuine. And there was so many things I wanted to ask him as a tennis fan. I wanted to ask him everything that I possibly could about the sport, about tennis, about his career. I had so many questions, but I could not get a word in because the entire time he was just asking me about gags and impressions.
Yeah.
So I would be like, for example, like he would be standing there and he'd be like, man, I love when you do your imitation of me. It is, when you do the laugh and you, and how do I say this? I like when you do the family guy, the guy from the family, the Peter Griffin and the little infant, the baby one, the Stewie that is Griffin, the Stewie Griffin, the one?
Yeah.
And I'm just standing there and I'm like looking at his manager and looking back at him going like, this is the greatest tennis player of all time. And not only does he like acknowledge me and recognize who I am, but like I had so many questions that I wanted to ask, but the whole time, all he wanted to do was ask me about my job, my career, what I did, my affiliation with tennis. And I couldn't get a word in. Like, he was just so genuine. He had such a, like, I could see that he was so compassionate and just like such a nice guy. And I was like, wow, like it completely changed because sometimes I feel like he gets hard done by publicly with his public persona, especially being compared to Rafa and, Roger and all those guys coming up. Yeah. I feel like meeting him in person, I was like, wow, you can never really trust the media because this guy is like a really good dude. And you can just tell. I spent 25 minutes with him just in that tunnel speaking to him. And I was like, nah, this guy is like one of the best blokes I've met.
Yeah. No, and I've heard that from many people who have met him as well. And I'm glad you got to have that experience because it's, very cool. And it's crazy that he had clearly watched, like you said, watched your clips and then known some of your other impersonations you'd done. And like you said, you're kind of like, you got to where you wanted to be through your comedy, to be with the love of your sport there in tennis and around Novak, which is super cool. But before we went live, we were talking about kind of mixing work and kind of your passions. And you kind of had, you talk about kind of comedy mixed with tennis is easy for you because that is tennis, like you just said, tennis is your love. Maybe can you speak to a bit, maybe with your experience with Nick Kyrgios? He's had struggles with motivations in tennis because he's very good at it, clearly gifted, like God gifted, but doesn't always like love it and treats it as a job, which is totally fair. Can you just speak to maybe some of like how that works with comedy? Because I know comedy is a very like mentally taxing thing, right? Because it's such a deep part of who you are.
Yeah, and again, I'm glad you brought this up, Stephen, because we touched on this briefly before off mic, but it's one of those things that I feel like, and it's hard for me to put this in. I'm trying to explain this as best I can, but I feel as though I can relate to Nick in that sense. not in the sense from like a tennis playing acumen, because that guy is one of the most talented players to ever grace a court, but just from like a comedy perspective. When I started doing stand-up, I felt like I had a natural aptitude for stand-up comedy. And I felt like I did have the right attributes that, if cultivated in the right way, could really, set me up to have a good career. And while I'm still in the comedy space, and I do love comedy, I love comedy, the genre. I don't love doing it. Like, I don't love being on stage and performing stand up. For me, I see it more as a job. And so I can relate to Nick when he makes those statements about tennis, because I know what it's like, I guess you could say, to be touted as someone with a lot of natural talent, but then not feeling as though you have that same passion that the public or other people are trying to project onto you. Right. So it's quite interesting that we relate on that level. And obviously Nick's a close friend of mine, and we've spent a lot of time together. And he's another one, like, where I feel like the media have sort of been quite quick to judge him in a harsh way. But a lot of the time, one of the frustrations I have with Nick is, yes, he's done some questionable things, and he'll be the first to admit that. And the media's been very quick to jump down his throat when he has had misdemeanors on court or off court or whatever it may be. But he's also done some incredible things that just don't get talked about. And as a friend, he's picked me up off the canvas when the chips are down, time and time again. Like, when I've been in some of the darkest places in my life, he's been the person on the other end of the phone checking in on me when, like, no one else was. So, for that, I feel indebted to him. And I also feel like, he's a very loyal friend if you're in his inner circle. So I think, like, it would be nice to see. And I think his public perception is becoming a lot better, especially over the last few years with his podcasts and stuff. But for people to see that more genuine, authentic side of him, because he does have a very big heart and he does care a lot about his friends and family and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's very cool to hear. And my most recent experience with him was in Miami, where he had a good win there in the main draw, and then after he lost to Karen Khachanov, we were just doing the little media scrum afterwards, and he's always been pretty vulnerable and spoke his heart and spoke his mind. Like, you could tell what he was thinking because he would say it, but he seemed to really be getting to a pretty professional, mature mindset with tennis, which, for a while there, it looked like he was pretty much done. But from what he was saying there, it looked like he feels he has a lot of tennis ahead of him, and he's kind of seems to have a bigger picture view of the impact he can have in the sport, even beyond his playing days. Like, he's obviously brought so much joy to people and grown the sport a lot just based on his play and his personality on court. But I think him being around the sport is a value add, similar to you, just being around there with the talent that you guys both bring to the sport, and not just on the court, is he's realizing that. And I hope you do as well, because, like, your inputs to the tennis atmosphere have definitely been valuable and add to the game. Like, when someone sees your comedy, like, someone might see your impersonation of Matthew McConaughey and then literally be like, oh, what else does this guy do? Oh, it's mostly about tennis. Like, and then he's kind of in the realm. So yeah, I hope, I've never talked to him outside of the professional media, but I hope him and you can kind of both see that, the work you guys have done has been super appreciated.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that, but I'm not comparing myself, obviously, to Nick, like, in terms of, like, the impact on the sport. I feel like he's obviously, it's hard to compare myself to someone like him, especially with his, freakish once in a lifetime talent. But I think it's more just, it's true that just in that sense of just being in an industry where you feel like you have a natural aptitude, and I guess you could say like a talent for it, and then not having that same passion that's projected on you, is something that I really relate to him with.
Yeah.
So,
what is I can imagine, and I've heard from other stand-up comedians that, like, comedy can be a is it similar to tennis in a way where it can be an isolating thing when you
Very.
when you go on stage and maybe you bomb, you don't do well and people aren't laughing at your jokes. It's like when you go on court and you can't make a first serve and you just get killed. Like, it's probably not a good feeling.
Yeah, I mean, there's something, and to use David Goggins' favorite word, there's something very masochistic about tennis and comedy.
Right.
Like, there's something very. I feel like people who excel in comedy and excel in tennis, there's an element of them that love the pain. I feel, because it's one of those, both those chosen fields, both those chosen career paths are not attainable at a top level without experiencing tons of pain.
Mm.
You have to go through so much, I guess you could say, humiliation, so much learning, so many losses, so many hard lessons to become elite. And like every player that you see on the TV that's at the top of the game, and every comedian you see on Netflix has been through some shit.
Yeah.
And that's how I see it.
Yeah. No, that's it. Just that is an easy connection to me. I feel like even for someone like Jack Draper, who's like on, people like don't know the back ends of things. So like maybe he's had a bit of an easier route than some people. But I was in Winnipeg at the Challenger a couple of years ago where he was playing there and he was ranked outside the top 100 because he was injured, and he's out there. It's not glamorous being at a lot of these challengers, as you've probably seen as well. Everyone there is stressed out because you're like, I gotta win I know I'm not covering my costs by being here, but I gotta win to get my ranking up because I'm 25 and all my friends they've gone off and got like a stable job, and what am I doing? Like, there's so much self-doubt even for the top guys, and I think they've all had to go through that. Some of them get through it quicker, like a Carlos Alcaraz maybe, and then other people are like Cam Norrie, who's almost 30 now, like I am, and he's just played Novak on the center court, but he's gone through a couple of tough years here, and before that, a lot of the stuff is grindy. Is that I'm assuming that's a pretty similar word in comedy.
No, absolutely agree. I feel like tennis is well, I might be biased, and I don't know if you agree, but I genuinely do feel like, in my opinion, it's the toughest sport in the world in terms of just the amount of travel that's associated with it, the isolation, the mental demons that go with it, the costs associated with it. I mean, a lot of the people that really do make it in the sport come from a privileged background, because it takes a lot of financial backing to be able to travel so much and get your ranking to that point where you're actually contending to have entries into quality events at slams and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's a very difficult road, and I know players that are so talented, play at such a high level, even at a club level here, but they don't get compensated at all for it. But then by the same token, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but in Australia, there's a sport called AFL football, and it's a very popular sport in Australia. It's probably our national football sort of thing. And I know a lot of players who play like a low tier level of football here, but they get paid for it, or they get compensated by the club will give them job opportunities and stuff like that. And you just don't see that with tennis. There's like the top end, and then there's everybody else.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's the toughest sport. I think athletically, it's like the most athletic sport.
Yeah.
One thing people always say is like, they're like, oh man, imagine if LeBron James played tennis. I'm like, he actually, like, I remember seeing Dwayne Wade trying to play tennis, like a video of him, and he looks like unathletic, if you could say that. Like, you're just like, he's just has no clue how to like move his body like that. And then he's one of the greatest basketball players ever. I'm not saying that athletics, that's just a different type. Like, the fitness it takes to be elite at tennis is really crazy, and it's like understated. There's the balance, there's the hand-eye coordination, there's the strength and the explosiveness, but then, like you say, the loneliness too, and the privilege, like you talk about players. There's definitely been players who would probably be right at the top of the game who didn't get the shot because they come from, I would say, mainly a country that doesn't host a major or a Masters 1000, because those countries have by far the biggest federations that have the most money that can, if you're like the 5th best junior in a certain age category in Australia, the Tennis Australia might fund you to go tour for a while and get those up. But if you're from Zimbabwe or even
Yeah.
from like Iceland, right, or something where there's not
Right.
a huge federation, like you got to come from a family that has money to do it, or you're just like, how are you going to do it? Like you can't.
That's
right?
exactly right. And even from a Tennis Australia standpoint, like I know a lot of players that I played with at a junior level who are very talented, who were on Tennis Australia, like the funding list. But even then, it's super competitive.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And that's all circumstantial too. Like that's all driven by their behavior off court, their behavior on court, like the sheer competitiveness of the other players out there, because it's such a dog eat dog world. Like their funding would be pulled, and then another player would go on the list, and it's just like it's brutal, man. Like you have to be like. That's why I think most tennis players who make it have some element of like psycho in them. Like they kind of have to have, like anyone, in my opinion, in the men's or women's game in the top 100 who's ascended to that level, which is just so ridiculous when you think about how many people play tennis, how many people there are in the world, how many people play tennis in the world, and then these people are the top 100 tennis players in the entire world.
Yeah.
Like, just know they're not well. Like,
you
know what I mean?
And like even if you take the 88th ranked player in the world, if he could walk through the crowd at most of these events and people aren't like they wouldn't know who he is, and if he wasn't carrying a bag and having a security guy by him, like it's really like the top people are the ones who have it all, and it's just kind of I mean, we could talk for hours probably. Like that's just I feel the nature of the sport with it being so global is that like people don't, I'm even watching the French Open now and I cover this like full time. I can't watch every tennis match. I can't watch 2 tennis matches back to back, like just as far as like an attention span. Like obviously I could if it's like Djokovic, Nadal, and then like Sinner, Alcaraz back to watch. Yeah, I'm gonna watch both matches, but yeah, there's a limited amount of kind of surface area for tennis stardom, and the people who get there, like you say, have gone through some stuff, and
100%.
Yeah, you kind of feel that when you're at events. Like you're probably friends with a lot of the Aussie players. I'm friends with kind of all we're not friends, but I know them all. Like, and I root for like the top Canadian players, and so there's guys like who are ranked 300, 400, up to 100 that are in the challengers. When I'm at a challenger, or like they're in maybe the qualities of like the National Bank Open in Toronto or Montreal, it's like it's stressful. Like around there, you're like, I hope he wins this match because then that's good for him, and I know where he's at. And like, and then you see, like I've seen it so many times where and people who play tennis get this, but people who don't. Like if you've ever tried to close out a match in your whatever Wednesday night league, it's stressful. Imagine trying to serve out a match when you're like, I'm gonna get $10,000 that's gonna bridge me over the gap. I'm gonna get something that, like the stress is just insane.
It is, and it's so crazy because a lot of the times I hear that phrase, it's just a game, but for these guys it's not a game. It's so much more than a game.
And we can all relate to that. I think like you're trying to provide, everyone's trying to, like I got a wife and like a young baby, like we're all trying to make money to provide, like to live real life. And at the end of the day, like these players are too. Like some of them, like you say, are privileged for sure, and they're kind of doing it because they can, but some of them are like that's the only way they see forward.
Literally, that's exactly right. So I think to sort of say what I was saying earlier, like it's without a doubt in my mind that the toughest sport in the world. And I've seen firsthand a lot of the Australian players, as you said, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of the Canadians first, like up close. You see how much work they put in, and you're just like, wow, like there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that the general public, particularly in Australia, because tennis is only talked about over here 2 weeks of the year, really.
Oh yeah,
for the Oz Open, like they barely talk about it, because for the rest of the season or the rest of the sports that we talk about is just like football, rugby, that's massive over here, and that's sort of like, and cricket, and that's all that gets talked about. And then the tennis rolls around for a couple of weeks, and then that's a hot topic for 2 weeks, and then it's gone again. So it's just the way it is.
It is the way it is. Speaking of that, so so you got the Australian Open. It's a ways from now. Like, so you said you're coaching tennis now, and that's just, is that a way for you to get your reps in and just stay close to the sport you love? And I guess what can we look forward to? Do you have anything planned as far as tennis content wise coming up that people can look forward to, or no?
Yeah, I think so. I think I took a bit of a break from, and I have been taking a bit of a break from making content. I probably haven't been as active on social media. I'm going to try and change that and start posting more videos again, because I love making people laugh. I love I guess being the class clown. More specifically, what I was talking about earlier was just like, I don't love stand-up comedy, but I love comedy as a whole.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoy bringing joy to people by making those comedy videos. So I'm going to keep doing that. I love bringing that tennis passion and that comedy passion together. But yeah, I'll definitely be making some tennis content. I can't tell you exactly what will be on the horizon, but maybe even a French Open video, depending on what happens with this Roland Garros. We might see Alcaraz hoist the trophy, in which case maybe I'll bring out my new Alcaraz impersonation.
That would be great.
But yeah, I'm coaching tennis again. I love working with kids. I love the sport. It feels very familiar to me. Something that I'm very passionate about, and I absolutely love being on court. And I see myself in a lot of these kids, especially the kids who are really trying to get better and putting a lot of effort into their tennis. For me, the moment I picked up a racket, I just, it's all I wanted to do. And I can see the excitement in these kids' faces and their willingness to learn and pick up things. And when I give them advice, and some of these kids are so willing to learn, their face lights up, they just want to get better.
Yeah.
And I love that, because I'm like, wow, like, I see myself in this kid. Like, I was like that,
Yeah.
So it feels good to be able to give back to the sport that's given me so much. And that's why I've really been enjoying the coaching side of things. It's been very rewarding. So yeah.
Sweet, man. Sweet. Well, that's awesome. And it's been great getting to meet you here, just doing this. I think that's kind of all the time we got for today, but I think some of these clips are going to be great. And it's cool for people to hear a bit of the backstory, because a lot of people just see your impersonations, and it's cool for them to kind of hear a bit of the backstory and what you the parallels between comedy and tennis, and some of those stories from meeting Djokovic and all this stuff is you've had a very interesting, very elaborate career so far, and I'm excited to see what things you come up with in the future.
No, I appreciate that, Stephen. Thanks very much for having me on the show. I love it. And yeah, no, it's been awesome, man. I'll come on anytime. I love talking tennis. It's awesome being on the show. So yeah, anytime, mate. Thanks for having me.